Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Adobe Live. Thank you all so much for joining. My name is Cody, and I will be your host for the next hour. Today, we are doing a show called Illustrating Stories. If you guys haven't watched the show in the past, basically what we do is I take a children's story couplet written by my husband, and we create an illustration that goes along with it. Today, we are going to be working off of an old illustration. I've been doing that for each episode. I take some of my old artwork and I'm kind of revamping it and reusing those characters from previous artwork to almost create a fictional story, like as if it was in a book, basically. We can head on over to Photoshop, and I'm going to say hey to everybody. Hey, Clever, welcome. Hey, Sam. Joshua, hey everybody, welcome in. Good to see you guys. Marius, welcome. Thank you all so much for joining. It's good to see you. Clever says, it's so lovely to see you're streaming now. It's a surprise because I'm busy and didn't check the schedule. I am on every other Tuesday. So yes, it is awesome to have you guys here. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, so this is an illustration that I did, I think, all the way back in like 2018. It's quite old for my portfolio, at least. And this is we are actually going to be drawing this little guy here with the donut. And our illustration that we're going to be doing today, the theme is finger painting. So we're going to be doing a little art scene with him. And our couplet that we're working off of is Wyatt is a wily wolf whose finger paintings make such a mess, but such things are simply part of the artistic process. So I am going to go ahead and hide this artwork here. And this is the little like really, really rough sketch that I did for our illustration today. I'm obviously going to be cleaning this up. And we can add in some more pieces to the scene. I was thinking about adding maybe like a little window in the background and kind of just like adding in some little things here and there, maybe like a picture on the wall or something, just to kind of give a little bit more atmosphere to the scene. And then we'll like get into coloring it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to working on this with you guys today. And also, if you ever, if you feel like illustrating this scene yourself, feel free to do so, and you can tag me on Instagram if you post it on there. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see like everyone's different interpretations of all the same scene. That's kind of like why I really love things like Inktober or Draw This in Your Style. I just love being able to see everyone's different interpretations of the same prompt. So yeah, if you guys would like to do that, please feel free to do so. Let's see. I am going to go ahead and lower the opacity of my sketch here, just so I can kind of go over top of it. I'm going to grab my favorite sketching brush to use in Photoshop is Happy HB. And this is one of Kyle Webster's brushes that's in his mega pack. And let's see, I typically use kind of like a charcoal-y gray color. And I'm just going to go over top of this and start adding in some detail too. So let's say, just for the sake of like, the lesson. Let's say that these two illustrations, both the one that we're working on and this previous one, are from the same book. If you're working in the same book, of course you want all of your illustrations to have some kind of continuity throughout. Like let's say this is like the only outfit that this character is wearing in the book. It's probably best to keep him in relatively the same outfit. Like I'll probably put him in the same outfit underneath this apron here. Just again, because that brings through continuity and it helps the reader start to recognize who the character is throughout all of the different scenes. It's kind of like why like cartoon characters, they have a closet full of all of one outfit. Because it helps build that iconic look for a specific character. So it would make it more difficult to recognize who a character is if they were constantly wearing different clothes every single time you saw them. So So yeah, that's one thing that we need to keep in mind if we want to make this look similar. Also, if we're recreating this kind of like watercolor texture, I will redo that on this new illustration as well. I can show you guys how I do that. And I also would like to try to keep around the same color palette as well, again, with continuity. Of course, throughout a book, if you have different scenes, different environments, you'd probably have different color palettes. You do that for movies as well, and video games, any kind of media really that's like story driven. But for this instance, I want to kind of keep it the same throughout. Especially if this was like a short picture book, probably want to like keep it similar throughout the entire story. So those are just things that are kind of like going through my mind. I'm kind of just like trying to explain to you guys like what my thought process is behind all of this and the intentionality behind like approaching an illustration like this. Hey V, welcome to the stream. How are you doing? Alessandra, hi, welcome. Good to see you guys. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, like I said, I am going to pull this illustration just over here, just so I can get a glimpse of his little outfit. And I am going to go ahead and just sketch right over top of this, just to clean it up. I'm going to turn down the opacity a little bit more. There we go. And I'm going to turn on smoothing because I have a tendency to have some jittery hands sometimes when I'm drawing, especially if I haven't really warmed up. But smoothing helps with that tremendously. Maybe I'll turn it down just a little bit. I hope you all had great weekends, and I hope you are also having great weeks. Are there any projects that you all are working on yet? Is anyone starting to think about Inktober? It's August. Happy August, by the way. So we're kind of like getting to that point, that time of year where everyone's like starting to think fall wow, excuse me, fall thoughts. So I know I am. I'm ready for it. Yeah, so here we go. So he's got his little arm right here. So I'm gonna just pull that down like that. And then I'm gonna look at, we have our little shirt here. So I am going to pull that down. I'm actually, as I draw the sleeve, I'm actually going to use the top line of his arm. So because he's holding his arm up like this, so with gravity, the way that it works with clothing, it's gonna be laying flush against your arm. And then the bottom of the sleeve is actually gonna be hanging because gravity is pulling it down. So that's basically how I like to approach clothing. I'm gonna use the line that I already drew for his arm, but I'm going to pull the sleeve itself down a little bit like this. So it gives it a little bit of volume, and then I'm gonna come back and just erase that line that I gave for his arm. There we go. Now we have his little sleeve there. The shapes that I'm going to be using are probably going to be slightly different to the original, just simply because my style has changed over the course of the handful of years that I've that have gone by since painting this. So that's a fun thing. That's a fun exercise, actually, because it kind of gives you an idea of how much your style has changed. I really love doing that kind of thing too, redrawing old artwork in your current style. It's a lot of fun. If you guys have never done something like that before, highly recommend it. It's fun to see your progress. And I'm going to do the same thing with his pant leg here. So he's wearing like these little shorts. He's actually got suspenders, but we're not going to be drawing the suspenders just because the apron is covering it. But since his little leg is kind of lifted up, it's kind of like coming back like this. Gravity is going to be pulling his little trousers down a little bit like this. Let's see, I'm going to make it a little bit shorter than that. So they're going to come out like that. I'm going to give it just a tiny little bit of volume just because on the other side, just simply because the idea of like jean fabric or pant fabric is probably a little bit thicker than shirt fabric. So that's kind of my thought process behind that. And then we're gonna give it a little bit of a cuff. So I might actually let it come out just a little bit more on that side as well. Little bit of a cuff. Like that. And then I also really like to draw seam lines as well. So we're gonna draw in some seam lines. There we go. Alessandra says, I just finished painting my mugs and creating sets of pun stickers. Oh, fun. Sam says, I'm starting a series of 3 character and creature concepts that would fit together in a fictional video game. Oh, cool. Fun having a strong theme and direction before designing. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I really love creating characters like built around a world. I think that it's so much fun to kind of like not only just draw characters, but draw or at least think about like the world that they live in, like world building. I know Sam does a lot of like D&D related things, so there's a lot of world building in D&D as well, so that can be a lot of fun. Just creating characters in a world and like backstories and things like that, it kind of like helps your artwork come alive. Folktale Week, yes. I've never done Folktale Week, but I always really appreciate all of the artwork that comes out of it. I swear, I think Folktale Week has some of the best prompt list posts. Like a lot of the artists that do the prompt list posts, they're so beautiful. I always just love the kind of like folksy look that the artists give for Folktale Week. It's so pretty. Okay, so he's got his little pants here. And let's see. I thought that it would be cute since he's a little kid. You know, you're supposed to like put your thumb through the hole on this art palette. I had difficulty drawing his thumb in a way that looked right, just because I don't typically draw fingers very often. But I thought that to circumvent that, I thought that it would be cute to have him just holding the palette, just because he is a little kid. So not knowing how to hold the palette might work for his character. And there's a perfect example of why backstory and just thinking about who the character is actually plays a part in the artwork that you create for that character too. So he's got his little hand there coming around the other side of the palette. So we're just gonna like draw some little, you know, like your classic little paint splodgies on here. And let's see. Also, looking back at this artwork, I really want this donut. Delicious donut. I need to draw more pastries, honestly. Okay, let's go ahead. And so I have this little like paint splotch on his forehead here too. And then we have some splotches on his apron. Like that. I think I might move this. I'm gonna lasso this like the palette finger hole and just move it up slightly, just to give it a little bit more breathing room away from his hand there. Sam says, yeah, it's fun to imagine how a creature, for example, might live, eat, move, attack, etc. Yeah, exactly. And like I was just saying, like those types of details like can actually play a part in the design of the character too. Like maybe like what kinds of things they might have in their pack or something like that. You know, the backstory is actually really important. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and draw his little muzzle here. Oops. Trying to keep it pretty simple so it doesn't take us too long to get through this sketch. But I wanted to show, I just kind of wanted to show my thought process behind how I sketch, as well as like the previous episode that we just did. I'm pretty sure it was the previous episode. We did a sketch from start to finish. I actually started the sketch on the stream, and we did a roller coaster scene. And we kind of like just went through the thought process of designing a sketch from the very beginning. So if you guys would like to see that kind of process, feel free to watch that previous episode as well. And then we got his little chin that's coming down here like that. And then we can connect those lines. There we go. Ashful, welcome to the stream. How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining. And then we also have these little paint tubes on the ground here. I don't know what colors I'm going to, well, I guess I did say I want to use similar colors to the previous artwork. But we could add in some extra colors also, because I think that it would be fun to kind of make it a little bit like more colorful, just because there are paints in the scene. So if you guys have suggestions for like adding any kind of like accent color or something, feel free to stick it in the chat. So I'm gonna draw a little Nana right here. Not a grandma, a banana. And a little apple. He's drawing a little bowl of fruit. But he's finger painting with no fingers, so I don't know really how his final painting is gonna look. He's paw painting. Okay, and then let's just throw in this table here. Let's see, what time is it? 17 minutes in. Okay. Hey, Barbara, welcome to the stream. How are you doing? Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining. Am I alone in the fact that a lot of the time I'm just too lazy to warm up my hands before I start getting into my projects? I very rarely actually warm up. Like sometimes I do because like my lines aren't working very well, so I kind of am forced to warm up. But most of the time I'm just like, okay, let's just get into it. I don't have the patience to warm up my hands. I would rather deal with difficult lines for the longest time while I'm trying to make art than just do warm-up exercises. Sam says I never actually warm up. I just take a few minutes to get into the groove. That's kind of how I am too. Like, and I also noticed that like throughout the day, like if I start doing artwork in the morning, throughout the day, my lines will get better, like later in the day, like the more I've been drawing, and I guess that just has to do with warming up. But sometimes I feel like I just have really lucky lines sometimes, you know, and some days I don't. There we go. And we'll just do a really simple easel. To be honest with you guys, I didn't even look at reference for what an easel looks like. I just kind of like wanted to make it like really simple. Almost like really rudimentary. I'm kind of just doing it off of memory. Oops. Usually I would look up reference for something like this, but I felt like it might look cute if it kind of looked a little bit not perfect. Again, because it's specifically like for a kid's, like an illustration of a kid. Okay. So we have our artiste. Okay. Oh, I need to draw his drawing. Have you ever noticed in like video games where there's like little like video games or in movies or something or TV shows where they're showing a little kid's drawing? It's like, this was not drawn by a child. This is like the best child's crayon drawing ever. It needs to be really sploochy. Like, oh no, that's not a banana. Let's try that again. He's Van Gogh. Let's put some little like paint splotches around it too. Here we go. And wiggly line. Perfect. Indeed. I love it. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and hide this. I'm going to hide this as well. And we are just going to go ahead and scale up this drawing. I was going to add something to, you know what? I think I will. I think I'm going to add like just a little window behind him, maybe. I'm going to do it on a separate layer just because I don't know if we're going to keep it. I want to just do it really quickly and see if, because I don't really want to draw anything in the background that is going to take away from him. But like if we did a little, I don't know. I was like, in my head, I was kind of like imagining like a little arch window or something that's like back here. Something like that. But I feel like it's taking away from the scene. So I think I'll just stick with this. You know what we could do? Paint on his paw. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, we definitely need paint on his paw. Yeah, there we go. Some little like that. Uh-huh, perfect. We could do like maybe like some little bricks or something to like indicate that he's got a brick wall behind him. That's artistic, right? Like he's brick walls are artistic. It's very I live in a studio apartment in New York City. I am going to lasso these because they're a little crooked. Sometimes if I want to line up artwork, I'm like, I don't know if this is straight. I'll just bring it down to the bottom of the page and just line it up with the document. Okay, that looks better. Okay, deselect. And let's see. They still look crooked. It's all right. I might just individually draw them and fix it as we go. But I'm going to go ahead and size up this artwork piece. And I am going to lower the opacity. And let's pull this illustration up just so we can use the color palette. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And I'm also going to pull it up above the text here. There we go. Okay. So let's see. So we have the cream color. What color do we want to make his apron? I might make his apron that same cream color that is his fur. I don't know. Let's go ahead and just start with his shirt, I think, and then we'll kind of work our way from there. So I'm actually going to use a brush called Gouache Perfecto from Kyle Webster. It's in his paint box, which is his mega pack. And I am just going to paint over top of this. A lot of the time when I use Gouache Perfecto, I like to have on color dynamics, but since we're replicating the look of the other artwork piece, I'm actually not going to have color dynamics turned on. And we are just going to, we are just going to paint this arm, and I'll show you guys how I like to create watercolor textures. Sometimes I'll use the live brushes in Fresco to do watercolor, but more likely than not, this is the technique that I personally use just because I've been doing it for a long time, so I'm familiar with it. Okay, so we have this shape for his little arm here, his little sleeve. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to press this checkerboard pattern, and it's going to lock the pixels. It's going to lock the transparency. So now you can see on this layer here, I have a lock symbol. So now what I can do is I'm going to go back to my brush menu and I'm going to grab a brush called Natural Edge Painter. It's one of Kyle's watercolor brushes. It's from his watercolor pack. And there's 4 different versions. I think this is Natural Edge Painter 1. And I'm actually going to use the same exact color that I used for the base. But since this brush is set to multiply, it's actually going to end up being darker. So whenever I do this watercolor look, I'm painting darks, which is basically how you would use watercolor in real life, because watercolor is, in a sense, on multiply in real life in the traditional sense, because every layer that you add with watercolor makes it darker. So what I'm going to do is I am going to just paint right over top of this, and it's going to give us that dark watercolor look. So every time I pick up and put my brush down, it adds another layer of color and makes it darker. And since in the original piece, his shirt is pretty dark, I'm going to do a few layers here. Like that. And then on top of it, we have some outlines with that same base color. So I am going to make a new layer. And then I am going to grab Conte Crayon. Again, it's going to look slightly different just because I'm using like slightly different brushes and slightly different techniques just from going from 2018 to now. So it's kind of like an updated version of this. So I'm using Conte Crayon. That's also in his Kyle Webster's Mega Pack. And I'm going to be using that base color, and we are just going to paint on some little details. So we're just drawing in. Always really a good idea to make your sketch visible in some way, just so you can remember how you drew your sketch. Because sometimes, like when I go to color something, I totally forget how I did the sketch. But I do remember that I liked how the sketch looked from the beginning. Or I'm sorry, from when I created it. So I always like to reference my own sketch, make sure I go back and reference it. So like right there, I was about to make a line that looked different than my sketch, but then I turned it back on and I remembered, oh, I actually wanted it to look different than that. Okay, there's his little arm. It's a really neat way to get watercolor. Thank you so much. Yeah, so and it's really simple too, and it creates a really nice nice overall look. So basically how I did this, it's exactly the same way. I just color like the solid color of each shape. Basically each shape is on a separate layer, as you can see, like for instance with her sweater here. This arm is on a layer behind the abdomen part of the sweater. And that's why I could very easily make it darker. So I just brushed on that arm. I just brushed over that watercolor texture to make it darker than the abdomen, to add some contrast between the two shapes. I don't typically outline my shapes with line work, so I always have to check my values and make sure that everything is readable. So I like to put individual shapes on separate layers to make that easy on myself. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and grab this cream color here. It actually might be the background color, so maybe I'll just color around it instead. So I'm going to grab this blue color, and we can go ahead and draw in his little pants. Let's make a new layer. Oh, I'm going to go back to my gouache perfecto. Halfway mark. Oh man, this stream is going by so fast. Always, always, always happens to me. Painting on his little trousers here. I realized that the leg on the right is a little bit wider than the leg on the left. If we didn't have a time constraint, I'd probably go in and fix that. Although, you know, I could let's just fix it right now in the coloring process. All I have to do is just kind of widen this pant leg here a little bit, and there, it's fixed. Okay. And then we're going to come in once again. We're going to lock that transparency. We're going to grab our watercolor brush, and we are just going to paint right over top of those pants. I think actually his pants were a different color than the mom's pants. I grabbed the wrong blue, I think. I think his pants are slightly darker, so I'm just going to paint over, oops, I'm on multiply. And paint over that. And then we'll start with this color. And I kind of, along with like just adding layers of darkness, I also like to come in and kind of add in those sharp shadows, like the sharp cast shadows, like this, for instance, like right here. That palette is going to be putting a cast shadow on his pants right there. And then same like with the apron too, like we can put a little cast shadow, and it kind of just helps add a little bit of dimension there. I think I'm going to grab this lighter green color, and we can add some paint on the ground. Gouache plus Conte Crayon. I can't remember the middle one already. So the brushes that I'm using, this watercolor brush is called Natural Edge Painter 1. There's 4 different versions, and they all kind of have a little bit of a different texture to them. So you might like some of the other ones better, but this is just the one that I like. Natural Edge Painter. And this is in the mega pack. Conte Crayon is in the mega pack as well. And Gouache Perfecto is in the mega pack as well. And then Happy HB, the sketch brush that I used, is also in the mega pack. Actually, yeah, and then the Natural Edge Painter, sorry. The Natural Edge Painter is the one that's in the watercolor pack. All of the other ones are in the mega pack. Okay, let's go ahead and grab that Gouache Perfecto. And we are going to paint on these little splotches on the ground. Since these are separate shapes, I'm probably just going to do multiple on the same layer, just to save a little bit of time. And I'll do that sometimes too. Like if a shape is far away from the another shape, I'll just go ahead and just do it on the same layer. Just because it's less less layers that I have to search through, and also it just less time that I have to spend like just organizing my layers and stuff, just less layers in general. Add in some yellow, because we're gonna have yellow in our painting definitely because of the banana. And then let's see, what other color should we put? Maybe I'll do, oh, I could add in like this little red. We would have red in the painting just because we also have a little apple too. Well, unless we make it a green apple. We could make it a green apple. But we're gonna have red. I kind of like the idea of it, this kind of like off primary color palette, almost like alternative primaries. Something like that. And so I'm going to lock the transparency of that layer, and I'm going to grab Natural Edge Painter. Oops. And we are just going to try to add a little bit of dimension to these. I don't want to add too much dimension just because, you know, they're puddles of paint, so they're not going to have like a really thick shape, but they would have a little bit of dimension coming off of the ground here. So I'm going to just give a little bit of color and maybe just some slight dimension. I actually haven't used these colors specifically in a really long time. This is kind of like my old palette. So this is this is kind of like getting back to something that I haven't touched on in a while. Cool. And sometimes while I'm working too, I like to just turn off my sketch just to kind of see what I'm really working with without the sketch. Sometimes the sketch kind of like blurs what it really is going to look like. So I think that's looking pretty good. And then I could also come in here and take the cream color. I'm probably going to just, actually, no. You know what I'm going to do? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Tell you what, let's do. Says Bob Ross. I am going to grab Conte Crayon, and we're just going to make like a little highlight. Very subtle highlight just with the base color. Just to kind of like add a little bit of a highlight on this paint, just to make it look a little bit wet and shiny, like paint would. Cool. Okay. Oh, and we can also, actually, let's go back to our paint palette. Let's grab one of these brown colors here and come in with Gouache Perfecto. Gorgeous earthy colors. Thank you so much. I'm going to come in with this kind of like tan color here. Oh, actually, let's do this on a separate layer. I want to put the palette wood on a separate layer. And then I'll just go back to my paint splotch layer to put on the shapes onto the palette. This paint palette looks like a potato. Especially this color is very, very russet potato. When you guys were kids, did you ever do potato art? Like when you cut a potato and then you put, like, you dip it in paint and like use it as a stamp? That was fun. Okay, let's lower the opacity. Actually, first, I'm going to lock the transparency. I'm going to go ahead and add in some color to it, just right off the bat here. I also like to use a pretty big brush when I'm using the watercolor, just because it kind of helps put a nice swath of color over really quickly. And we're going to add in like kind of just like this edge, like the three-dimensional edge that might be on this palette, like towards the bottom part here, that we would see from this angle. And also, don't forget the inside of the thumb hole here, like that. And then let's go ahead and lower the opacity of that layer. And we're gonna throw on our little paint colors. And let's go ahead and just add blue for our fourth color. We'll just go primaries. Okay, so let's raise the opacity. And as you guys can see, actually, we're getting some of that like eye jitter, like my eyes are vibrating while looking at this green color against this palette here. And that's because our values aren't strong, don't have enough contrast. So I am going to go natural edge painter, and that's where painting in the shadow will help make it stand out against on the palette here. So I'm going to grab that green color, and we're just going to add in some darkness to give some contrast. There we go, something like that. And then also I might even come back to the palette and maybe just add in like a little bit of a cast shadow, just to kind of ground it on the palette a little bit better. I don't really have a chosen light source, but just kind of helps a little bit so it looks like it's actually sitting on the palette. And then let's also come back and add in those highlights again. I think I might actually take the base colors and just lighten it just a bit. There we go. Yeah, that looks nice. Yeah. Now if we zoom out, those little kind of like scratchy marks that I made actually look like little highlights. I'm gonna go ahead and go back to our other paint on the ground here and add in those brighter highlights. Cool. Turn off our layer, our sketch layer, just to see what it looks like. And I'm also, since we are kind of running low on time, I also want to come in and add in some of these line details too. So I'm going to take this darker color that I got from the shadow portion of the palette, and I'm going to make a new layer. And then I'm going to hold Alt in between those two layers until I see a little drop down arrow. and then I'm going to click. And now we have a clipping mask. So what a clipping mask does is it allows you to paint inside the shape that you're clipping into. So what I want to do with this darker color is I want to add in some wood grain. So by painting it on the clipping mask, it makes it super easy for me to just come in here and add in some like wood grain lines. So I don't have to worry about like keeping it inside the shape or anything of the palette. I can just come in here and add in my lines really, really easily. There we go. So we got in some little wood grain there. Looking great. Thank you so much. Love the colors. Thank you. Yeah, I'm liking it actually. It's been a while since I've used like brighter colors like this. So usually my palette in the last few years has been a little bit like warmer and more muted. So it's fun to kind of like come back to using like primary colors like this. Okay, so we have that in place. Since I want the apron to be the background color, I'm actually, instead of painting it in, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to outline it. So I am going to come in with, let's see, I'm going to grab maybe this darker color here. And we're going to just outline it with Conte Crayon. And that's fun too, to sometimes to just like add in outlines of things. I've done it. If you go on my Behance, there's an example of this in the Alice in Wonderland piece that I did of her falling down the rabbit hole. I kind of mixed in some shapes that were only outlines. If you look at the playing cards, some of them are solid shapes and some of them are just like see-through outlines. And it kind of adds in just like some interest. Like we could also do that with like more paint on the ground if we wanted to. Like we could come in here and like do some just like little outline shapes or something like that. I don't know. It kind of just like adds a little bit of an artsy flair, you know? I'm actually going to erase a little bit of his arm here so it looks like it's behind this the apron. Okay. And then I'm also going to, let's go ahead and maybe do the easel. Make a new layer. And then we can come in with Gouache Perfecto. I think the combination of these colors are really nice. It kind of like I was saying earlier, kind of like just reminds me of kids stuff. Because a lot of the time kids stuff is very primary color focused. Just because of kind of like, it makes you think of like grade school and stuff like that. So kind of, this almost makes me think of like, it's some kind of art class or something, you know? Kind of gives me that feeling. And maybe that's why there's bricks behind him. Maybe he's actually at school and he's doing a little class project, you know? Inspired by that wood grain, why do I make my life harder for myself by trying to find a pattern? I love wood grain. I tell you, it took me a long time to figure out how I wanted to draw wood grain. I think that really what it comes down to doing wood grain is muscle memory. The longer you do it, the more wood grain you do, and you can study how other people do wood grain, so you can kind of see like what kind of lines people make, and also just look at pictures of real wood grain too, and kind of just get a sense of like the general look of how wood grain looks. Basically, what in terms of wood grain, what I like to do is I will kind of, here, I'll do an example on like just a solid, we'll do like a little plank of wood here. So let's make a clipping mask, and I'm just gonna grab this color. And, oh, that's not a clipping mask. There we go. That's a clipping mask. There we go. For wood grain, typically how I kind of go about doing it is I will make some slightly curved lines like this. Some of the lines will be closer together and kind of follow each other like that. Some of them bigger space between. I also like to come in and do kind of like a round shape like that. And sometimes like with wood grain, you'll have two lines that are coming in like around like that, and they'll kind of make that loop shape. And you can also like have, maybe you'll want to fill in this space here like that. Maybe you'll want some lines coming in like this. Sometimes if I'm gonna fill in a space, I'll do like a little circle, because that's like a knot in the wood. I did that for the paint palette right here. And again, you kind of just get a feel for how you want it to look for your work. For me, I'm going for really simplistic shapes and not a ton of detail. So I keep it pretty simple. There are other artists out there, of course, that, you know, are gonna, you know, add in a lot more detail or something. But this is kind of just generally like what I'm thinking while I'm creating it. Hey, Sean, how are you doing? Good to see you. Thank you so much for stopping in. And I'm actually going to be doing wood grain on the easel too, so we can go through that together. So let's go ahead and grab Natural Edge Painter. We only have a few minutes left here. Not even, really. I probably need to stop here pretty soon. But let me just throw on some shadow here. Let's just do like the bottom part of this easel really quick. Throw on some cast shadows here. Like his arm is gonna have a cast shadow, and the bottom of the easel here is gonna have a cast shadow. A little bit like here and here, and then to add some dimension to the wood, there, boom. Really super easy. And then we are going to grab this lighter color. Actually, no, let's do the darker color. Let's grab Conte Crayon for the last thing we're gonna do on the stream. And we are just going to, oh, let's make our brush a little bit smaller. And we are just going to make some little wood grain lines. I'm actually going to add in just a little differentiation line here. Like that. And then we'll just add in some little loopy lines, basically. Some of them are closer together. Some of them are farther apart. A lot of them are kind of like arced. They're very arced. And there you go. There's wood grain. All right, you guys. That about wraps it up for me today. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Again, if you would like to illustrate this couplet yourself, feel free to do so. If you post it online, tag me at Codi Bear on Instagram. And I will be back. I can't remember how many episodes we have left in this show, but I will be back not next week, but the week after, I believe. And thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great week and a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.